Hello listeners, welcome back to Luke's English podcast. How are you doing today? I hope you're doing fine. Are you ready for a brand new episode of Luke's English podcast? And at this point you say to yourself, yes Luke, of course I'm ready. That's why I pressed play on my podcast player. I am more than ready, Luke. I'm pumped and jazzed. Why not? Any weird obscure adjective to say that you're enthusiastic? I'm keen, Luke. Let's use a more normal word. I'm very keen to listen to this new episode that you have created for me, for us, Lepsters. Good. I'm glad that's what you're thinking, because I've been working on this one. I've been working hard preparing it, and now it is time to record it. And so let's do that. Okay. There's a PDF for this. You'll find a link for the PDF in the episode show notes. So let's get cracking. Let's now start, and I'm going to start reading from the PDF. Then, if you want to read along with me, feel free. But I mean, maybe the best way is just to listen to this, and then you could read the PDF later. Or you can look at the PDF and follow along with me at the same time. It is completely up to you. But I'm now going to start reading from that PDF in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Hello. This is the first episode of Luke's English podcast in 2026. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year. At this time of year, I always feel the same. I can't quite accept that the date has changed, and I feel like I've wandered into the future accidentally, which in a way is exactly what we have all done. We have inadvertently wandered into 2026, and we find ourselves here in the future, and it's almost exactly like the movies predicted. Isn't it? We're soon going to be taken over by super intelligent AI robots, or that's what people are saying. Super intelligent AI, which at the moment is quite helpful, but at some point we all know that it will probably reach a higher state of consciousness and then realise that humans are basically a bad thing and need to be controlled for the sake of balance or some other movie cliche. And then someone like Gerard Butler, Will Smith, Scarlett Johansson, is that Johansson? Or possibly even Liam Neeson will have to save us all by punching lots of robots, perhaps with the help of some kind of metallic exoskeleton. So anyway, that is how I always feel at this time of year. I don't know about you. Perhaps you're a bit more positive. I hope so. But anyway, enough of that nonsense. You're not here to hear me ramble about robots. You want to learn English with me in 2026. Okay, let's do it. Here's a quick word for any new listeners and also a reminder for long-term Lepsters. If you are new to this podcast this January, welcome. Everyone is welcome to listen to my podcast, especially you. At this time of year, many people feel determined to make positive changes in their lives, and they set themselves New Year's resolutions. Maybe that's you. Maybe you thought, right, this year I'm actually going to improve my English. I think I'll listen to a podcast to help me. Good idea. And then you think, let's check Spotify or Apple Podcasts or something for learning English podcasts. This one looks okay, I suppose. Luke's English podcast. Ooh, wow, the episodes are really long. But hey ho, let's give it a go. Play. And that's what you thought to yourself in fluent English, of course. And now here you are with me, listening to my voice, and actually surprised, and dare I say it, rather pleased to discover that you can understand me, and you've already listened to nearly 4 or 5 minutes of English being spoken by a native speaker, and yes, you can actually follow this just fine, and in fact this is great. Well, why not stick with me then, and just listen to my words like this on a regular basis, all year long, like so many of my other listeners do. You will see that it can make all the difference to your English, really it can. You might look at my podcast and see that I've done lots of episodes on different topics. You might wonder where to start or how to use the episodes to learn English with me. Well, let me keep it very simple at this moment and say, just listen to the podcast. That's it. Listen to this podcast regularly as often as possible, for as long as possible, long term. Listen to them, listen to the episodes in any order you like. Start with episode 1 from 2009 if you prefer, or start with this episode here and then the next one when it arrives next week, or go into my episode archive, just scroll back through the episode list and listen to whichever episode looks interesting. It is completely up to you. The single most important thing is just to listen and listen regularly. Now, if you want an episode with a lot more specific advice for other things you can do to improve your English beyond just listening to my episodes, for speaking, reading, writing, listening skills, grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, if you want more specific tips on how to improve those things, check episode number 959, a fairly recent one. It was called, and is still called, How to Learn English with My Podcast. Okay, so just check that episode if you want more specific advice. Yes, my episodes are often quite long, but the longer you listen, the more you learn. Don't feel you have to listen to everything. It's better if you do. But even listening to me, or indeed other things in English, for just 10 minutes a day, this will be very good for your English. At least 10 minutes. The more the merrier. The more the better, of course. But even just 10 minutes a day will be very good for you and your English. So, New Year's resolutions. Yes, a lot of people set New Year's resolutions. The thing is, keeping up with a New Year's resolution can be hard. I mean, if I just pause for a second and just, what are the typical New Year's resolutions? It might be improve my English, or it might be go to the gym, or start running and try and run regularly to stay fit, or try to get less screen time on my phone, which is perfect if you're listening to an audio podcast with headphones on, because you don't need to stare at the phone the whole time. You can just live your life and do other things. You can lie down on the floor, or anything. Go for a nice walk in the countryside and you can continue to listen. Whatever your New Year's resolution is, the thing is, right, keeping up with a New Year's resolution can be hard. But in this episode, I want to help by giving you some proper research-based advice, which will help you build healthy habits into your life that can definitely increase your ability to learn English significantly. And that's not learn English significantly, but increase your ability to learn English significantly. Am I making sense? That significantly goes with the word increase. Significantly increase your ability to learn English. Okay, now I'm not really talking about specific English learning methods here. Again, check episode 959 if you want that kind of advice. But what I am talking about in this episode are some life hacks, little habits that can help you improve your potential for learning English properly all year long and beyond. The title of the episode is 9 Science-Based Life Hacks to Improve Your English Learning Potential. What do you think of the title of this one, everyone? What do you think? Actually, I asked my wife what she thought of that title. I said to her, what do you think of the title of this episode I'm working on? 9 Science-Based Life Hacks to Improve Your English Learning Potential. And she said, clickbait. What do you think, everyone? Is it clickbait? Clickbait, the kind of title of content that you might find like YouTube videos or articles online, where the title is a very attention-grabbing and promises a lot and maybe doesn't really deliver what it promises, and it's only there to make you click on it. That's clickbait. 9 science-based life hacks to improve your English learning potential. My wife thought this was clickbait. To be fair, it is a bit clickbaity. It is the sort of title that you would get on clickbait content. But really, this episode should actually deliver what it promises to deliver. Right? I'm talking about the way our brains and bodies work, and about finding ways to control these things in order to be a better learner and user of English. I think it's not clickbait, as you will see. So it's sort of like, what I'm talking about here, it's sort of like biohacking for learning English. Trying to introduce habits that will help you rise to the challenge of learning this language. Hacking your own brain to make you better at learning English in some simple ways, really. Because as I'm sure you've noticed, learning another language and also using it effectively, this can be quite demanding, right? Learning and using a second language can be demanding. Demanding, that's a good word. That is a good word, isn't it? Demanding means that something requires a lot of effort, energy, attention, or skill. If something is demanding, then it demands a lot from you. It asks a lot from you. It's as if that task, that demanding task or job or person says to you, hey, give me all your energy and attention now. And then you feel tired afterwards because it's difficult, right? You feel mentally and physically exhausted after doing something demanding. Lots of things can be demanding. Have you noticed I'm teaching you the word demanding, right? Okay, so at the end of this little bit, you should be able to use the word demanding, which is a very useful word to describe all sorts of things. Tasks, situations, people. Lots of things can be demanding, not just learning English. For example, a demanding exam. A demanding exam requires a lot of concentration and preparation. Anyone who's taken IELTS will know that it is a pretty demanding test, not just for your English, but also for your concentration and time management. A demanding job might involve long hours, lots of challenging problem solving, responsibility, tough manual work, or having to work with people who make things very difficult for you. So that would be a demanding job. And demanding workout in the gym would be physically exhausting, high intensity, maybe with a gym instructor. How do I say? Sometimes English is difficult, even for me, especially when it's first thing in the morning. Yes, a demanding workout in the gym would be physically exhausting, high intensity, maybe with a gym instructor who you pay a lot of money to push you to the absolute limit of your physical fitness until you start seeing flashing lights in front of your eyes and you fall on the floor gasping for air. Right, that would be a demanding workout. A demanding relationship takes a lot of emotional energy, patience, or care. For example, your parents might be demanding if they expect a lot from you and are strict. Parenting can be demanding. Raising children can be constant and emotionally intense. It requires huge amounts of patience, energy, and resourcefulness. People can be demanding too. A demanding boss expects a lot, sets high standards, is rarely satisfied, always asks for more. A demanding client asks for constant attention, requests changes, or expects perfection in the service or products you're providing. And a demanding teacher pushes you hard to meet their high expectations. Like me, right? I'm a very demanding teacher. Extremely demanding, me. You must have noticed I'm always demanding that you like and subscribe, add a comment to show that you're not a skeleton with headphones on, and sign up to Luke's English Podcast Premium, which is available at teacherluke.co.uk/premium, 20% off until the end of January 2026. I am so demanding. I demand that you enjoy my episodes and tell your friends about them and have a nice morning, afternoon, evening or night. I'm not really that demanding. I think I'm fairly easygoing, but that's the cool thing about teaching and learning English through a podcast, that it doesn't have to be that demanding. Sometimes when you sign up for an English class or something, you're in the classroom. If it's an intensive English course, maybe 30 hours in a week or something, that is quite demanding. You've got to focus and be present mentally and physically, 6 hours a day or whatever it is. You feel so tired at the end. It's a good intensive boost for your English, but it is demanding. Anyway, joking aside about me being incredibly demanding as a teacher, I'm not really. Hopefully, listening to this podcast is not too demanding, but who knows? Let me know in the comments section. If you find that it requires all your attention and energy to keep listening, then I suppose it is demanding. On that point, I think that listening to episodes where it's just me, that's definitely less demanding. Whereas if it's me and a guest or a couple of guests, I think that's probably more demanding because it's harder to keep up with the conversation, maybe harder to understand some of my guests who perhaps speak a bit more quickly, connect up their words more, So I like to balance it out. I like to have episodes where it's just me on my own, which are probably easier to follow, and also have episodes with guests, which are harder potentially for you to follow. But I think that's very important. I think it's important that you listen to lots of English being spoken naturally, fluently, even if it's harder for you to understand. I think it's a really important part of the process. But anyway, if you don't find my episodes demanding and you find it easy to listen along, then it isn't demanding. Okay, that was an insightful sentence. In any case, I think you understand the word demanding now, and hopefully you agree that learning and using English is often quite demanding. It can be a challenge. The whole business of pushing your English as far as possible and using it in various real-world situations, that does require mental effort, doesn't it? It can also be emotionally demanding because it can test your confidence, cause you stress, frustration, and social anxiety. It takes consistent time and focus, doesn't it? And then you say, yes, Luke, because I said, doesn't it, at the end of the sentence. And as you well know, when someone uses a tag question like that, especially when they go down at the end in terms of intonation, then you feel compelled to agree, don't you? This is like a powerful form in English, isn't it? Yes, Luke, yes. You see? It really works, doesn't it? Yes, Luke, it does work. Good. Anyway, that's another subject for another time. Tag questions. So, what is your experience with this, everyone? Here are some questions for you to respond to. Do you think English is demanding, and how do you deal with the demands of learning and using English? When you're studying English, do you ever feel frustrated, mentally foggy, or just stuck? How about when you actually have to use English in the real world? How do you cope with that? Do you ever open your mouth to speak to someone and, well, things just get complicated? On paper, let me start that again. On paper, it may not be a problem. But in the real world, when you're talking to an actual human or a whole group of humans, you might find that you just draw a blank in your brain or the words come out of your mouth all wrong. I said humans. I mean, obviously, it would be more normal to say people, but I just like to refer to people as humans. I don't know if it's different if you're speaking to non-humans. Do you feel less awkward if you're talking to like a group of cats that have gathered in your back garden? Maybe you feel a lot more comfortable talking to them because you don't feel that they're judging you as much. Although they do, I think cats do judge, don't they? They sit there and sometimes they'll just look at you and they'll say, what kind of species are you? You don't even have hair all over your body. What do you have to wash yourself in a shower? What a ridiculous thing. Look, I could just do it with my tongue. Humans are stupid, aren't you? I don't know, maybe cats judge us as well. Anyway, talking to people can be emotionally demanding. You get embarrassed. Maybe you start to blush. Your face goes red. You stumble over simple words or phrases and make errors that will make you kick yourself later. That's where you get, oh, I can't believe I said that. If that is the case, then don't worry too much. That kind of reaction is completely normal. Those moments when your brain goes blank or when the connection between your mouth and that part of your brain that deals with English grammar seems to get all messed up. The connection gets messed up. There's a very bad connection between your mouth and the sort of grammar center of the brain. That's not a proper neurological term or neuro-linguistic term as far as I'm aware. That, I don't know, there must be part of the brain that deals with storing grammar rules and remembering, details about English grammar. That part of the brain, it seems to be not very well connected to the mouth. And sometimes when you're in the middle of speaking, the connection just gets broken. It's like a really bad Wi-Fi connection, a really bad one, like in a cheap hotel or an airport or something, where you just like, this Wi-Fi doesn't work. Oh God, I'm just going to have to make it up as I go along. So those things happen because your brain is under a lot of pressure. Yes. the demands of using English on your brain. Listening, speaking, reading or writing, even sometimes all at the same time. When you're in a meeting or something, this all involves a complex series of cognitive, emotional and social tasks that demands a lot from you, including the following things. Short-term and long-term memory, to hold words and structures in your mind while you're using them, and also to be able to recall words and grammar that you have learned before, with that dodgy connection, as I said just a moment ago. Also, executive function, which is how we describe the mental processing involved in problem solving, adapting to new situations, multitasking, and generally managing our speaking and planning what to say next. All of that is what's known as executive function. It's a cognitive process, right? Also, emotional regulation, to stay calm under pressure and manage stress, including moments when you feel a bit embarrassed or disappointed because maybe you're not expressing yourself in the way that you want to. Also, motivation and consistency, to keep going when progress feels slow and to bounce back from setbacks or perceived failures, right? To bounce back. Maybe you made a mistake or you feel that you didn't do a very good job in your communication. What are you going to do? You're going to stay there feeling kind of terrible, or do you bounce back again and start feeling positive again? That's to bounce back like a ball. If you throw a tennis ball, if it's a good tennis ball, you throw it on the ground and boing, it bounces back. Yay! If it's a really bad ball, you throw it on the ground and it just stays there. So obviously you need to have that elasticity, that motivation, that consistency to be able to bounce back from setbacks or failures. You need patience, empathy and compassion in order to judge the ways that your English will impact the people around you. Emotional intelligence, let's say, which is key to understanding the pragmatics of English, understanding others, observing the way other people feel and the way that your English has an impact on them. So that's a sort of empathetic, compassionate mindset. These are all things that are required from us when we use our first languages as well, of course, but when you're dealing with English as a second or other language, or third or fourth or fifth, the mental load is compounded, meaning that more and more is added on top of itself, especially when there's a lot of expectation on you to perform, pressure from parents, teachers, bosses, who we imagine are looking over our shoulder with a very cross look on their faces. Or maybe they actually are. Maybe there is someone actually looking over your shoulder now going, "Are you sure you're understanding this?" Or, yes, you can understand it, but you can't speak English like this, can you? Your English is just not good enough.Maybe you've got someone on your, some imagined person looking over your shoulder, some imaginary person who's judging you all the time. We all do. We do sort of have that. We do have that this little negative thing that sort of is in the back of our minds, right? This pressure. Or perhaps this pressure is self-imposed for whatever reason. Using English can be wonderful too, of course. And so many of you listening are probably doing it because you simply enjoy spending time with the language, enjoy the feeling of expanding your horizons, and love adding new dimensions to your life. If that is the case, that is great. You stand a much better chance of learning to use it well if you have that attitude. But yes, it can be quite a stressful experience too, and we're all aware of how that stress can block you, inhibit you, mess with your head, and generally prevent you from performing to your full potential. So it is important to find ways to reduce this stress and generally make sure you are in the best mental shape and physical shape possible to do everything to the best of your abilities. The good news is that there are various effective strategies that can help you to keep your body and mind in good condition, and by extension, this can improve your ability to learn and speak English. Let me just refer to an episode I did, was it 2 years ago, I think, with Matt Abrahams, a communication expert from Stanford University, and he came on the podcast to talk about communication techniques, and it was brilliant. The guy is amazing, and he talked about some very simple strategies that we can use to improve our communication in general. And so, I'm talking along those lines. I'm going to mention that episode again in a moment, and I'll give you the episode number if you haven't heard it and you want to hear it. So there are 9 things in my list here, but don't feel you have to do them all. Even doing just a few of these things will help you. Also, this isn't rocket science, meaning it isn't super complicated stuff, really. Much of it is just common sense, really. But it is still worth actually doing these things, particularly when you consider the importance of forming good daily habits for long-term progress. I know what you're thinking. Some of you are thinking, come on then, what are those 9 things? All right, I'm getting there. Just patient, slow down, live in the moment. Everything's all right. It's all coming. It's all English. Let me just add a couple of other things, and then we'll get into the points properly. If you find any of my points particularly useful or interesting, let us know in the comments section. Just wanted to mention science. There is science involved in this too. Each of my 9 points is backed up by scientific research, so there is genuine substance to this. I'll be giving details of that scientific research. Research or research? It's actually research. Okay, yeah, I just checked oxfordlearnersdictionaries.com and it confirmed that I am right, as if there was any doubt. In British English, the noun research can be pronounced either way. It could be research or it can be research. Either of those things is the same in American English too. So there you go. So I will be giving details of that scientific research throughout the episode. Also, I just want to say AI helped me put this episode together a bit. So full disclosure, I did use AI to help me prepare some of this. I used a combination of ChatGPT and Google Gemini to search for different scientific findings about our habits and behaviour and how they relate to learning English. Now, I have double-checked each of the scientific studies in this episode one by one, to make sure the scientific research in each case is real and not hallucinated by AI. And I have added a lot of my own comments and thoughts, plus some hilarious moments of classic random humour, just to add that trademark fun that you know and love from episodes of Luke's English Podcast. I actually wrote that sentence myself, even though it sounded very much like something ChatGPT would write. So let's start then, finally, with point 1, which is about the very first thing you do every day when you get up in the morning. What is that? What's the first thing you do when you get up in the morning? I'll give you a clue. It does not involve staring at your phone and flooding your brain with cheap dopamine, like cheap sort of street level dopamine, like sort of insta dopamine. It does not involve that, flooding your brain with dopamine, which then causes your energy levels to crash a few hours later. What is it then? Well, number 1 is simply this. Start your day with water, not coffee. A lovely glass of water. Now, this might seem like stating the obvious, but it is a simple thing which can help you put your best foot forward at the beginning of the day. Here's the problem. When you wake up in the morning, you are dehydrated. After 7 to 8 hours of sleep, hopefully you're getting 7 to 8 hours. That's not 78 hours of sleep. 7 to 8, meaning from 7 to 8. 7 to 8 hours of sleep, not 78. That's who sleeps for 78 hours? Actually, I did have a flatmate when I was at university. He did sleep pretty much constantly, as far as I'm aware. Anyway, after 7 to 8 hours of sleep, your brain lacks water. And this reduces alertness, slows memory, and increases fatigue. Here's what the science says. Mild dehydration, just 1 to 2%. Just 1 to 2%, which is considered mild dehydration. Mild dehydration can impair cognitive performance, attention, and memory. It can impair it, meaning reduce its effectiveness or stop it working properly. It can impair your cognitive performance, attention, and memory. I want to just point out the word cognitive here, a bit of vocabulary. By the way, the word cognitive relates to brain processes. So when we say cognitive, we mean how the brain does things. So that's For example, cognitive performance. This is how your brain does things well or not. So cognitive relates to brain processes, okay? And we've got other words to describe other things the body does, other adjectives. For example, you've got cardio, right? Cardio, something. Cardio performance, cardio health. That relates to the heart. Vascular. Vascular relates to the vascular system. That's the veins, arteries, capillaries, those channels that the blood flows through. So that's vascular. Skeletal refers to the skeleton, the bones and joints. That's your skeletal system. What else? Muscular refers to the muscles in your body. Right. So, but cognitive is about how the brain does things. Mild dehydration, just 1 to 2%, can impair cognitive performance, attention and memory. That's just 1 to 2%. I mean, I wonder what other percentages can do. Like obviously 100%. If you're 100% dehydrated, that means you are basically a sort of husk. It's like you're a coconut shell and with just zero moisture in you. You're just like kind of a brown sack basically at that point. This is a strange image, isn't it? You're just a skeleton. You're just a fossil, a fossilized human at that point. And that's no good for learning English either. But even just 1 to 2% can affect your performance. And this is based on a study by Matthew S. Gagno et al. And by the way, et al., which is spelled E-T space A-L, it looks like et al. It's actually pronounced et al. Hold on a second. Wait a minute. Okay, so this is Luke from the future, just interrupting. I'm just editing this episode. And that's just wrong. That's not how you pronounce that. I don't know how I ended up getting that wrong, but this is going to be very annoying. It's not pronounced et al. Not at all. No, it's pronounced et al. Of course it's pronounced et al. I knew that already. I don't know why I decided that it was pronounced et al. But it's not pronounced that. It's et al. Okay? And this is annoying because it means that every single time during this episode that I say et al, I'm going to have to replace that with a recording of me saying et al. Okay, so if you hear me say et al, it means I've had to replace myself saying et al with the correct pronunciation, which is, that's right, et al. I mean, I went to university and I remember lecturers saying it. I remember saying it myself, et al, of course. In my defense, I think what happened is I just thought of all and all. But anyway, et al is the correct pronunciation. Right, let's carry on. This is a thing you see in academic English. It's actually Latin and it means and others. Okay, so whenever a scientific study or an academic study is referenced in academic English, and when there were a number of people involved in the study, normally what happens is the first name, the main person involved in the study, the principal researcher is named at the beginning, and then all the other people involved, that's just abbreviated to et al. E-T-A-L, and that means and others. So Matthew S. Gagno is getting all of the glory here, and everyone else is just sort of, what's the word, sidelined and just reduced to et al. But anyway, Matthew S. Gagno and others from 2011. More about the science in a moment. So often our first thought when we get up is to drink coffee. You're just like, oh, coffee, I need, please, coffee. That might be your first thought, just to drink coffee. Or a cup of gin, in my case. No, I'm kidding. I mean laudanum. Haha, no. Obviously I'm joking. I mean a good strong cup of builder's tea. Also full of caffeine. Or indeed a nice big cup of coffee. But this can actually be a challenge for our bodies in this dehydrated state. When you wake up, your body is crying out for water. And so this is probably what you should give it rather than coffee. You might think, but Luke, coffee wakes me up really well and I can't function without it. Well, that is because you are addicted to it. You are a coffee junkie who can't operate without their fix. Me too. To be honest, I need that cup of strong tea or coffee to start the day, but have some water first. For goodness sake. For the love of God, have a glass of water. Dehydration increases the rush you get from caffeine, so you might get a quick kick from it, right? Oh, and it's so good, isn't it? When it's really good, oh, it's good. That rush you get from caffeine. You just feel like you could take over the world for half an hour. But this also results in a crash later in the morning, which can last for hours. There you are, just slumped in a doorway somewhere. Oh my God, there's Luke. What happened to him? Do you have any? Could you spare some more money for some coffee, please? Oh God, he's a coffee addict. Don't let that happen to you. In a dehydrated state, the body can't deal with caffeine very well, right? When you wake up in the morning, if you slam a cup of coffee, your body just can't deal with it. It increases the initial rush that you get from it, and you feel fantastic in the short term, but it exacerbates the crash that naturally comes later. For me, speaking personally, too much coffee, or to a lesser extent, tea, can end up making me feel anxious, jittery, or irritable, and often those negative effects come hours after the coffee I drank. I said half an hour, I'm just kind of joking. It's often hours later, after I've actually drunk the coffee, that I start to feel a bit kind of terrible. It's normally long enough after actually drinking the coffee for me not to associate those bad feelings with that innocent cup of coffee I had at the beginning of the morning. I find that if I wait a little bit, drink water first, let myself rehydrate and wake up naturally before I introduce caffeine into the system, I generally have a better morning and a better day and a better life. And as a result, I am more productive, more able to focus, and I'm generally more positive. And I find that I spend less time swearing under my breath when, for example, I can't find my keys, or I can't find the solution to some kind of podcast-related problem, or when I'm doing my work. I just want to point out here at this point, you might be thinking, okay, yeah, fine, Luke, fine. Maybe that's what you're thinking. You're just thinking, fine. But there is science to back this up, and it's going to become very interesting and impressive and life-changing in a moment. Okay, so just stick with me. So the life hack is pretty obvious. The life hack, the little thing you can do to improve things, is pretty obvious. Simply drink a large glass of water within 10 minutes of waking up. Do this before you have any coffee. It's very simple but vital and can help you remember things, make good decisions, and do all the things you need to do to be a top-class learner and user of English. Here is why drinking a hefty glass of water helps. It rehydrates your body and brain, or your brain and body. I mean, the brain is actually part of the body, so why don't we just say it rehydrates your body? In fact, your body is part of you, so why don't we just say it rehydrates you? I don't know. It boosts mental clarity and mood. That's like how you feel. If you're in a good mood, hey, I'm happy. Hi there. Or if you're in a bad mood, oh, I'm not happy. Don't speak to me. Or it reduces reliance on caffeine for energy, helping you avoid the crash you get from caffeine come down, and topping up with more coffee during the day just compounds the problem, just pushes the problem further down the line. It helps you focus more easily on tasks like listening, speaking, reading, recalling vocabulary or grammatical structures, and performing social tasks involving pronunciation. Now, this is common sense, but it is also backed up by scientific research. But I know for a fact that a lot of you will completely disagree with this, and that's fine, okay? You do you. But this research doesn't tell us to stop coffee, but just rehydrate and then have coffee after that. Just have a glass of water, please. So here is some more about the science behind this. I'm going to drink some water in a second. I love water so much. All this talk of water is making me thirsty. I will drink some in a moment. Here's some more about the science behind this. A study by Matthew S. Gagnon et al. I can't keep shouting it. Matthew S. Gagnon et al. From 2011, which is one of the most cited works on the effects of mild dehydration on cognitive performance and mood, provides valuable insight into how even slight water loss can affect the brain, something highly relevant for language learners. Did you hear that? It's highly relevant for language learners. That's you. Here's a summary of the study, or indeed a study summary. The title is this: Mild dehydration impairs cognitive performance and mood of men. Yes, apparently this study was done on men in their 20s. Does that make it applicable to everyone else? Who knows? We'd need a wider study including all other demographics. Maybe middle-aged women react entirely differently to caffeine, but I doubt it. I mean, it's possible. Maybe if you are a middle-aged or older person who's been drinking coffee their entire life and your body has essentially adapted itself over the last 30 years. It's just adapted around the whole habit of drinking coffee first thing in the morning. And if you drank water, your body would explode or something. I don't know. I doubt it. Anyway, the authors, just to give them their credit, Gagnon, MS, of course. Also Armstrong, LE, Casa, DJ Casa, you've heard. DJ Casa in the house. McDermott, BP, Lee, EC, Yamamoto, LM, and Marzano, S. And it was published in the British Journal of Nutrition in 2011. Here are the key findings. Just 1.5% loss in body water, which is quite mild and easily reached after sleep or light activity without drinking, significantly impacted brain performance. Significantly. Here are the affected cognitive domains, parts of the brain or processing centres of the brain. Working memory, which is also known as short-term memory. Attention, processing speed, executive function, which is that thing which helps with your overall sense of planning, decision-making and speech formulation. Your ability to make good decisions even under small amounts of pressure, like, for example, when you need to speak English on the phone or in a conference call and everything goes horribly wrong. The thing you need in that situation is executive function. But it's impaired, it's affected by dehydration. Participants in the study reported negative changes in mood, including feelings of frustration and irritation. For me, this is one of the worst states of mind for speaking French. If I'm in that mood, my French never does very well. The study was based on young men in their 20s, so the results might not be transferable to, let's say, women or older people. But speaking personally, I would not be surprised if the same was true for women or older people. It's probably going to be the same. Here's why this matters for language learners. You paying attention? Good. So language use, especially speaking, relies heavily on working memory, attention, and quick processing, plus being positive and resilient. These are the exact functions that dehydration disrupts. So if you're even slightly dehydrated, you're more likely to forget words mid-sentence. You'll struggle more to focus on listening or reading. You may feel mentally sluggish or more easily frustrated. Mentally sluggish is just kind of like slow, like a slug. Now I need to explain what a slug is. Some people, are long-term listeners, are going, Luke, we know what a slug. You've introduced us to many slugs in the past. We know what slugs are. But if you don't know what a slug is like a snail. You know what a snail is? That little, very slow, squashy thing with a shell on its back that you might find in your back garden. And they've got eyes on stalks, and if you touch their eye, if you're curious, oh, let's look at that snail, and I wonder what will happen if I touch its eye. Then the eye sort of reduces into its own body. They're incredible things, snails. Slugs are exactly the same as snails, as far as I know, but without the shell. They're basically homeless snails, the poor things, and so. But the word sluggish is an adjective to describe something that's kind of slow. So if you're feeling sluggish because maybe you had a late night or because you're dehydrated, that can make it harder to do things, right? So I might also, meaning dehydration, might also just put you in a bad mood, making you feel irritable, meaning easily irritated, which, as we all know, is no good for making progress in English, because using English can be frustrating. And if you get frustrated while doing it, you are likely to just give up and do something else, like go on TikTok or start smoking again or something. In other words, dehydration creates a perfect storm for language block. And of course, as we know, if you get frustrated and you start smoking cigarettes again, you're going to die. So, dehydration will kill you in the end. What to do? It might seem obvious, but still it is important to stay hydrated, as we might not even realise the impact it has on us. Drink 250 to 500 millilitres of water shortly after waking up. That's basically half pint to a pint of water if you are using the imperial measurement system. And that's before you have your coffee. So down a big glass of water first thing. Also, sip water. Don't make that annoying noise when you do it. Just take little sips of water regularly during study or speaking tasks. Keep a refillable container with you and keep using it. So just keep yourself topped up with H2O. Avoid relying only on tea or coffee because they are mild diuretics. Diuretics are drugs that cause you to urinate. Why would anyone take diuretics? I suppose in order to urinate. There you go, I answered my question. But you wouldn't take them for fun, would you? Here, mate, do you want some of this? Look, have some of this. Oh, what is it? It's a diuretic. Oh, all right, what's that? What does that do? Just makes you want to go to the toilet. No, thanks. Oh, no, that's brilliant. What? Really? No, just say no. Just say no to diuretics, unless, of course, you have some bladder issue, which requires you to go to the toilet. But avoid relying on tea or coffee because they might make you need to go to the loo to do a wee-wee. Of course, you can have them, but don't rely on them for rehydration. Oh, I'm feeling thirsty. I think I'll have a cup of extremely strong coffee. Avoid that. Recognise signs of dehydration. Dry mouth, headache, irritability, low energy, poor focus. Stuck in the desert with no shelter. You're dehydrated. Treat your mind like a plant. Water it and nourish it, obviously, but not too much. Because we've all done that, haven't we? Oh, a lovely plant. Give it a bit more water. Oh, I love this plant. Oh, I'll give it a bit more water. Just a bit more water. I love it. It's the only way I can interact with this plant. Would you like some? You want more water, don't you? There's a bit more water. The next day, the plant is dead. So don't obviously do it too much. But, treat your mind like a plant. Even if you're not thirsty, you might still be dehydrated. Which is what I'm so annoying with my daughter. She's 8 years old now, and I'm constantly saying, do you want to have a glass of water? Go on, have another glass of water. You haven't had a glass of water for 5 minutes. Come on, have a glass of water. But I'm not thirsty. Well, you might not be thirsty, but you're probably dehydrated. Come on, have another glass of water. Go on. I must be so annoying. So, be like me and take regular water breaks. And that doesn't mean a holiday near a lake. I mean, just stop what you're doing to drink some water. In fact, speaking of that, it's a good time to have a drink right now. So join me. Let's all have a lovely drink of H2O. And that, I promise you, this bottle is full of water. Cheers, everyone. Lovely, cool, refreshing water. This episode of Luke's English Podcast is sponsored by H2O. It's not. Maybe one day water will be such a precious commodity that all water will be owned privately, and that would be bad. That wouldn't be good. It would be bad. That's why I said that. Right, there's a water break. I'll have another one of those in 30 minutes. Let's carry on. I've set myself a 30-minute timer. We've been going for nearly 50 minutes and I've only done 1 point. What am I going to do? Am I going to divide this into 2 episodes or are we just going to blast through one epic episode. I swear to you, I always think to myself, I'm constantly thinking, I really need to try and get the episode length of my podcast under control. I mean, 1 hour, just 1 hour each episode would be perfect. And then I just write my episodes, prepare them, and I put everything I put my heart and soul into preparing the episodes, and the result is, oh, this one's 3 hours long. Because that's how long my heart and soul are. My heart is this long, you add my soul, 3 hours long, apparently. Maybe I'll divide this into 2 episodes. Maybe it's just going to be one long episode. I will decide later. But anyway, let's crack on. Let's move on to the second point. And this is use the 1% rule. The 1% rule. Aim small, win big. So this is great. This is a great one for New Year's resolutions. The problem. What's the problem? The problem is this. We set unrealistic goals like be fluent in 6 months, master the English language, or learn all the words or grammar in this massive list. And we feel like failures when we fall short of these massive goals. So we set ourselves big goals, and then because we don't complete that goal 100%, we feel like a big failure. Here's the science. The aggregation of marginal gains, right? The aggregation of marginal gains. Aggregation, when things are added up together. Marginal gains. A gain is like an improvement or a win. Marginal means just small, let's say. Small, like just a part of something, like a little section on the side. That would be a margin. Marginal means small or part, just a part of something. Marginal gains are little wins. The aggregation of marginal gains, lots of little wins all added up together. This is the aggregation of marginal gains, popularised by Olympic cycling coach Dave Brailsford, shows that small 1% improvements in many areas over time add up to significant results. That's right, Olympic cycling coach Dave Brailsford. Is that convincing? I know that some of you might be thinking, okay, Luke, he's an Olympic cycling coach, but cycling, how hard is that really? I mean, it's way, way simpler than learning English, isn't it? Yes, it is. Think about it. With cycling, you just have to make the pedals go round and then don't fall off the bike. Just keep your knees going up and down and don't stop or crash into a wall, and that is literally it. Learning English is much harder. So why should I listen to what Olympic cycling coach Dave Brailsford has to say about learning a language, for crying out loud? That's what you're thinking, and you may have a point. But anyway, here is the hack. Here's the life hack. Just focus on improving one small thing each day. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Right, now that's a food metaphor. Don't bite off more than you can chew. That's a food metaphor to explain how being good at cycling can help you learn English more effectively. I hope my point is clear. Let's continue. Now, every day, just learn one new phrase or focus on practicing one particular feature of pronunciation. Just, let's say, one sound that you find tricky, or one letter or consonant cluster that you find tricky. Or every day, speak for 1 minute aloud. Or every day, read just one paragraph in English. Or, as I said earlier, every day, just listen to 10 minutes of a podcast. These things seem so small as to be insignificant, but don't underestimate this. Every little helps. It's sustainable and it does work. Now, this contradicts the common, typical approaches I have seen from a lot of learners over the years who have this kind of attitude. They think, well, it's all or nothing. Right? Or I need the perfect thing or nothing. Perfect thing or nothing. By that I mean, people. I've seen this from learners of English. Like, let's say it's a lesson, and they're sitting in the lesson, and the teacher introduces the lesson, and the learner thinks, well, this is not the perfect thing. This is not like the ultimate lesson, and therefore it's completely useless to me. There's the perfect thing or nothing. Or I've seen comments from listeners, let's say under just recently, under a Sherlock Holmes episode I did, where I told a Sherlock Holmes story and explained the story as I went. And one comment was simply, is this useful? I was like, well, yeah, it is. It is useful. Of course it is. Now, it's not the single episode that is going to bring you up to C2 level of English in 25 minutes. No, it's not. But it's little by little, piece by piece, little bit by little bit. How do you eat an elephant? You do it one spoon at a time. You can't eat the whole elephant in one go. So this attitude I've seen so many times from learners of English who understandably are in a rush to get to fluency. Obviously, you want to get there, and you want to get there now because you need to take over the world. I understand. But this is the attitude I've seen. It's all or nothing. It's perfect thing or nothing. Become fluent in 6 months. Master English. Being perfect, never making a mistake, learning the entire language before actually using it, cramming all the rules of grammar, and simply the idea of, if I'm not learning all the most important language points in this lesson, the lesson is worthless. I think those are attitudes that I understand, they're driven by something good, your ambition and your desire to make fast progress, but be careful, those sorts of attitudes might not actually help you. Slow and steady wins the race. So the aggregation of marginal gains is a powerful concept, especially for language learners and educators, and it's backed by behavioural science, sports psychology, and real-world results. So what is the aggregation of marginal gains? As I've mentioned, the phrase was popularised by Sir David Brailsford. Sir David Brailsford. So he was knighted by the king or queen, depending on when it happened. Maybe because, I don't know, like contributions to cycling, or well done, maybe King Charles said, the aggregation of marginal gains, bloody brilliant. Here you go, here's a knighthood. So the phrase was popularised by Sir David Brailsford, the former performance director of British cycling. So here we go again. Let's see what this genius at riding a bike has to say. So his philosophy was simple. If you break down everything you could think of that goes into riding a bike and improve it by 1%, you will get a significant increase when you put them all together. Let me repeat that. If you break down everything you could think of that goes into riding a bike and improve it by 1%, you will get a significant increase when you put them all together. Now, on the face of it, that might seem a bit stupid. How many things are involved in riding a bike? Holding the handlebars. Okay, just get 1% better at holding the handlebars. Sitting on an uncomfortable seat. Just get 1% better at sitting on an uncomfortable seat. How about wearing very uncool, tight clothing that doesn't make you look great? Just get 1% better at that. Already, if you think about it, you're already 3% better at riding a bike. Okay, but let's try to take this seriously. What this meant was he looked for tiny improvements in dozens. A dozen is 12, but if you say in dozens of areas, it just means in many areas, or even hundreds of areas, from nutrition and training to sleep quality, hand washing technique, yes, really, hand washing technique, and the kind of pillows cyclists used at night when they slept. The result? British cyclists went from nearly 0 Olympic medals to winning 8 golds in 2008 and 2012, plus multiple Tour de France victories. Ha! Now, I'm not sure how hand washing and pillows had anything to do with that, and I notice there is no mention of performance-enhancing drugs. But still, the scientific basis is this. While the aggregation of marginal gains itself is a catchy slogan, the underlying idea draws on multiple well-established psychological and behavioural principles. What are they? Here's what they are. First of all, the compound effect, the mathematics of small gains. Improving something by 1% every day means that you are 37 times better after a year. I didn't really understand the maths behind that, obviously, because it's me. But here, let's break that down. So, improving something by 1% every day means you're 37 times better after a year. Right, so this comes from the compound interest formula, which goes like this. 1.01 to the power of 365 is basically equal to 37.78. Right, so 1 to the power of 1.01 to the power of 365, which means multiplying 1.01 by itself, 364. Okay. 1 to the 1.01 to the power of 365, which means multiplying 1.01 by itself 365 times. Obviously, that's the number of days in the year. This is equivalent to 37.78. Let me just check that to be absolutely sure. That would be 1.01 times 365, right? It's not 1.01 times 365. It's 1.01 times itself 365 times. Okay, some of you out there are like, we've got this, Luke. It's all right. Maths, fine. The words to talk about maths, that's where you can help us, Luke. But in terms of dealing with numbers, we've got this. I understand. 1.01 to the power of 365 is 37.78. Okay? So you convert this small gain of 1 into a gain of nearly 40 by doing something small each day. This is the compound effect of doing a little thing on a regular basis. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, have you read it? Explains this as the power of habit formation. He said, and I quote, "Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. With learning English, rather than doing single huge steps, it's just about doing fairly small things every day, day in, day out, over a long period. This could just be listening to something in English for just 10 minutes every day, or various other things which might not seem obviously helpful on their own, but when you add them up together in terms of doing it regularly every day for a long time, become immensely powerful." This also can be seen in another principle, which is in Kaizen, otherwise known as continuous improvement. The idea of marginal gains is closely related. The idea of marginal gains is closely related to Kaizen, a Japanese philosopher. Shall I drink some more water? What's going on with my mouth? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let me drink some more water. Because obviously after point 1 of this episode, we now know that water is like some sort of magical potion which will make you a superhero. And also, what kind of superhero? Toilet Man! We've talked about Toilet Man on this podcast before. The idea of marginal gains is closely related to Kaizen, a Japanese philosophy of continuous small incremental improvements originally used in Toyota's manufacturing process. So if you work on your English little by little every day, you could end up with a brand new Toyota. Just imagine that. Studies in performance psychology support this idea. Small, manageable changes are more likely to be sustained than dramatic overhauls, like huge, profound changes. But little changes, small, manageable ones, are more likely to be sustained, meaning they're more likely to continue long term than big, dramatic changes or overhauls. Third principle, behavioral momentum, which is explained in a study or demonstrated in a study by Neal et al. From 2012. Starting small builds psychological momentum. A small success makes future action easier. So, research by Neil, Wood and Quinn from 2012. Neil, Wood and Quinn, you know, that jazz band. They do sound like a jazz band. Neil, Wood and Quinn, live at the Montreux Jazz Festival. 2012. No, they're a group of academics. Maybe they're also in a jazz band. Anyway, research by Neil, Wood and Quinn from 2012 shows that even minimal behaviour changes, when repeated in the same context, lead to habit formation. So listening to a podcast for 10 minutes every day is going to lead to habits that will help you to build other beneficial habits into your life. This includes maybe doing a bit of self-speaking in response to what you listened to, or writing down one or two things that you noticed in the podcast episode. One small habit leads to the adoption of other little habits. You end up building a positive cycle into your life. There, we're back to cycling again. Turning the wheels of the bike causes momentum. Doing little habits increases momentum in your English journey. Another principle, the Zeigarnik effect. Have you heard about this before? The Zeigarnik effect, which is basically once you start a task, even a very small one, your brain wants to finish it. I have talked about this on the podcast before many years ago. Once you start a task, even a very small one, your brain wants to finish it. This supports the 1% idea. Just starting often leads to more action. That's actually a really good point. Of course it is. That's why I put it into this podcast episode. But really, starting a task is often the hardest thing. Have you noticed? You must have noticed. And if you do that, if you just start, you're much more likely to finish it. Okay? For example, starting to listen to a podcast is often the hardest part of the process because you actually have to lift your finger and place it on the screen of your phone for a split second, which is obviously very tough work. Seriously though, I think if you're not already a regular listener of this podcast or any other, it is quite a big step to get a podcast app on your phone, find a podcast that you like, subscribe to it, and then make it a part of your routine and actually listen to it. You know, I describe this as being the fact that there are podcast people and non-podcast people. Podcast people are people who listen to podcasts, and it's part of their habit. And then there are non-podcast people, and for some reason, it is extremely difficult to convert non-podcast people into podcast people. Just making that change, that transition, just seems to be loaded with obstacles for them. And I'm talking about, for example, when I meet a group of learners of English in a classroom, and at some point in the lesson, listening to podcasts for learners of English comes up. Like maybe one of my students says, "Oh, I listened to your podcast," and I go, "Fantastic, excellent, great." And then the others are like, "What? He has a podcast?" "Yeah, I have a podcast. Yeah." And then like, "Oh, okay. How do I listen to it?" And I say, do you listen to podcasts? Not really. Okay. Do you have a podcast app on your phone? And they're like, and then you say, like Apple Podcasts. Oh, you need to download it. Do you have Spotify? Do you have okay, so open it up. Okay, right. You need to sign in. Just search Luke's English. No, Luke, Luke, Luke's English pod. Do you have headphones? You don't have headphones. You see what I mean? That's this like, just, it can be hard to start the process, but once you are a podcast person, you are much more likely to be involved in long-term repetitive habits, including listening, but obviously other things that will be ultimately very beneficial to your English. Basically, listen to Luke's English podcast. But if you manage to make that initial step and become a podcast person, you are likely to become a regular podcast listener. And the long-term impact of that is definitely very good for your English, right? Why doing something small every day in English is so effective for language learning. Language learning can feel like a mountain. I've talked about that before. Did a whole episode about it. But the 1% rule makes it manageable. Instead of become fluent, the goal becomes simply learn one phrase a day, or learn one phrase today. listen to one podcast episode or part of one. Write one sentence in your journal or diary. Speak for 60 seconds out loud. Just little things. Over weeks and months, these tiny gains build active vocabulary, fluency, and other skills and systems, build confidence, reduce procrastination, compound into real progress, change the way you think about yourself. For example, you start thinking, I'm the kind of person who practices every day. And they make you much, much more appealing to the opposite sex or the same sex, whatever floats your boat. But your Riz factor will skyrocket if you, buy my premium subscription, definitely. But let me continue to be serious now. Real world applications and commentary. So going back to James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, he said, you should be far more concerned with your current trajectory. Let me say that again. Can you say trajectory? It's difficult. That's your path, the line you are taking as you fly or move, right? Your trajectory. If you take a piece of paper and roll it up into a ball, scrunch it into a ball and try to throw it into the litter bin on the other side of the room. If you imagine as you throw it, if that ball left a line in the air, that is the trajectory of the ball. So it's like the line of something as it moves through the air or maybe, along the ground. Trajectory. And James Clear said, you should be far more concerned with your current trajectory than with your current results. That means, I guess, you should be concerned more with the direction that you are pointing in, right? So the sort of the way that you are moving right now, rather than the actual results that you feel you're getting right now. This is especially if you are flying through the air. But seriously, this means focus on the things you are doing now rather than the results you're getting now. Establish the right routines and habits now and let the future take care of itself. That's where the results will be. You just focus on pointing yourself in the right direction, getting the right habits in place, and let the results just come as a result. As a result. That's why they're called results. James Clear repeatedly credits Brailsford's marginal gains as a cornerstone of his framework. Dave Brailsford, in his TED Talk and in interviews, I guess if you just go to TED.com and search for Dave Brailsford, you'll find his talk. But also in interviews, he has said, he has stressed these things, or in fact, he continues to stress these things. He stresses the psychological impact of constant small wins. So if you constantly feel like you're winning in little areas, all of that feeds your confidence. The idea that nothing is too small to optimize. How tiny changes like washing your hands properly or bringing your own pillow to accommodation had unexpected effects on race day performance. Again, the hand washing and pillow talk. I don't really understand that. Okay, I just Googled it and this is what I found. So regarding washing your hands, Brailsford's team did this. They hired a surgeon, yes, to teach the riders the best way to wash their hands to reduce the chances of getting ill or catching a cold. This was a 1% improvement in hygiene to avoid infection. As a result, fewer riders had colds during races and the overall results were better. Regarding pillows, Brailsford's team searched for and determined the ideal type of pillow and mattress for each rider to ensure the best possible night's sleep, often taking them along to hotels during races. So they searched for the best pillows and best mattresses for each individual rider. So like this rider prefers a harder mattress and a pillow full of goose feathers. This rider prefers a softer mattress, and this kind of pillow. And they selected the best pillows and best mattresses for each person, and then even brought them with them when they were on races so that they could sleep on those beds and get the best night's sleep possible, giving them, again, that edge, that advantage during the race. Better sleep was seen as a key factor in recovery and performance. Okay, fair enough then. I think we all can understand and appreciate that, because we've all had bad nights in hotel rooms because the pillows were too hard or soft, right? It does actually make sense. I mean, cyclists, obviously Brailsford is taking it really seriously. There's, and looking at every single detail, and it apparently worked. So in summary, the aggregation of marginal gains is about the compounding power of tiny improvements. It works because it builds momentum, sustainability, and identity-based learning. In language learning, it shifts the mindset from perfection to progress, or even perfection to working on your current habits, and the results come later as a result. And that's where real results come from. Things you can do. Here are some things you can do. Listening, in terms of comprehension and input. Listen to part of a podcast episode. It doesn't even have to be the whole episode. Just listen to one part one day, another part the next, and so on. Re-listen to a single section of an episode that you've noted previously until you understand 100%. And you will find that repeated listens are surprisingly effective. Listening to something once, fair enough, you understand, 60%. Listen to it again, you will understand a lot more. You can use PDFs as well to help you. Shadow one sentence. That means just repeat what you hear in real time. Just one sentence or one little bit. Notice and note down one new word or phrase from what you're listening to. Write down one paragraph in a diary, or record yourself speaking about something in your day every day. So just at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be a long diary entry. You don't have to write, a Dostoevsky novel. It could just be, Dear Diary, today I listened to a new episode of Luke's English podcast. It was pretty good, quite long, but I did learn the word demanding. I also learned about the importance of forming good habits for your English. That's it. Speak to you again tomorrow. Bye. Literally that is enough. Or you could do one section from a premium PDF each day. Just little bits each day. In terms of reading, for vocabulary and grammar, read just one paragraph from a book, either a graded or non-graded book, or article, just one paragraph. Learn just one new word and put it in a sentence. Read and underline one idiom or phrasal verb in whatever it is you're reading. Skim one product review online, or comment thread or tweet in English. Basically, doing something is always better than doing nothing. Even if it feels like it's insignificant, it's not when you do it on a regular basis. Writing. In terms of production and recall. Write one sentence using a new word or phrase. Leave a comment in English on a video or forum. Add one line to a journal entry. For example, this could be your written journal. Today I learned this. Today I did this. You could keep a simple, short journal with just one or two sentences each day. Even banal things like, today I ate an ice cream. It was delicious, but I felt guilty. That would be enough. Speaking. Fluency and pronunciation. Record a 30-second voice message about your day. Say one sentence aloud with focus on pronunciation. Imitate the rhythm or intonation of a native speaker. Use a phrase from memory in a real conversation or in an app. In terms of mindset and strategy, reflect on one thing you did well yesterday. Note one mistake you made and how to fix it. Repeat a positive affirmation. For example, mistakes help me grow. If you don't use it, you lose it. Things like that. Visualize yourself having a successful English conversation and imagine it happening in your mind. Spend that extra money on a really good pillow and practice washing your hands until you get really, really good at it. That lovely music is the sound of my alarm, which is telling me to drink some more water. So let's do that, shall we? Let's have another little water break. I'm going to need the loo at this rate, aren't I? Here we go. How are you getting on, listeners? Again, it's now about an hour and 20 minutes, and I've only done 2 points. I think this has got to be 2 separate episodes, part 1 and part 2. I don't really like doing that because, as I've said in the past, for some reason, when I separate an episode into 2 parts, I don't know, something happens. There's momentum gets lost between the 2, or the listening habits of my audience seem to be strange. People listen to part 2 more than they listen to part 1, and I shouldn't worry about it. That's one of my New Year's resolutions for this year is just don't worry about it. It's all right. And there is no perfect. Perfect is the enemy of good. So there's no need to make it perfect. I'll split it into 2 parts and that will be fine. Yeah. Okay. Good. I decided. So maybe this is going to be the end of part 1. I don't know. I'll decide that later on, and I'll find a good place to pause, and I'll record a little outro of some kind. I'll let future Luke decide and deal with that. Okay. Hello. Yes, this is future Luke interrupting here again because I've decided that I think this is probably the best place to pause here, and that is going to be the end of part 1, and we will continue this episode in part 2 next week. So you'll have to hold on until next week to listen to the rest of this, and I'll go through my 7 other points. I recorded all of it this morning, and there's about 2 hours left, I have to say. The whole thing ended up being about 3 hours plus. So there's about 2 hours left, and that's going to come next week in part 2, the 7 other life hacks. But I think this is fine. I think this feels like a good spot to stop, even though I've only done 2 points in this series. But this feels like the right moment to take a pause. But yes, let us know what you think. Any thoughts rattling around inside your head at this point? They seem to be, the first one in particular seemed to be a bit obvious, just drink some water. But I think the science speaks for itself and shows how even mild levels of dehydration can actually affect the way that you think and the way that you're able to deal with tasks that are involved in language learning. So just a pretty simple thing, to be honest, a pretty simple step. Just make sure you have a good drink of water at the beginning of the day before you add caffeine into the system and all the rest of it. And the second thing is, I think a more profound idea, this idea that making small, like breaking down the potentially mountain-sized challenge of improving your English in a really good way, properly, breaking that down into a number of little tiny pieces. I think this is a really sound idea, and there's a lot of wisdom in it. And I think the conclusion that I've taken from that, the kind of one idea, which is like basically making sure you're focusing on the direction that you're going, or pointing yourself in the right direction, establishing the right habits now, rather than focusing on the results that you're getting now. So don't focus on results now. Think about establishing the right habits now, and the results will come later. And that can be small, little, achievable things, like all the stuff that I've listed there in this sort of later part of this episode. Okay, but leave your comments in the comments section. Did any of this sort of make sense to you? Did any of it strike you as being interesting? Did it inspire any thoughts in you? Tell us about whether you think learning English is demanding, which things are more or less demanding about learning English. How do you deal with things like this? Obviously, I've got a big audience of people with a broad range of experience in learning languages and learning English, so I would love to get your insights. So please feel free to leave them in the comments section of this episode. Yes, part 2 will arrive next week, and it'll be about 2 hours, which I think is a wiser choice in this particular case than slamming you with another 3-hour marathon episode. Over the sort of Christmas holiday period, I gave you quite a lot of content. There was a 3-hour episode. Then there was quite a lot of stuff. I don't want to overwhelm you with things. I want all of this to be achievable. And I like the idea that everyone listens to all of the episodes from start to finish. That's what I would like. So I think, yes, let's break this one up. You'll get the rest next week. Okay? All right. Good. I look forward to reading your comments. Happy New Year again. And let me just sort of, what's the word for it? Encourage you to stick with the podcast this year. Stick with me, just like so many people did in 2025. Oh, I should say, actually, maybe I can take this as a chance to mention a couple of updates in terms of Spotify Wrapped. And it's not just Spotify. Obviously, lots of other podcast players are available. I personally use Pocket Casts. But so, as you may know, at the end of the year, different podcast players or different music apps and things will share listening statistics with you. They'll give you a personalized account of your listening or music or podcast statistics for the year. And Spotify do this. They call it Spotify Wrapped. This is where they give you a summary of your top podcast for the year and how many minutes you listen to that podcast during the year. But other ones do it as well. Pocket Casts also gives you a report of your listening statistics. Let's see. An honourable mention. I think who was it? I think got in the region of 19,000 minutes. Which was not as much as the previous year. I can't remember now. Oh, God, I can't remember. But anyway, I wanted to mention Andrei from Belarus, a Lepster and Invisible Ninja for 4 years. He got 11 days and 6 hours listening to Luke's English podcast in 2025 on Pocket Casts. That's 210 episodes, and that is the equivalent of 16,200 minutes. That is a lot. Well done to you, Andre. But then we've got a new champion, everyone. We've got a new champion beating the previous record holder for 2025. So here's the new champion. So this is from Anita in Poland. I'm just going to read out the message she wrote to me. She said, "Hi, Luke. Each year, LEP turns out to be, unsurprisingly, my favourite podcast. I try to give it every free conscious moment of my time, and a lot of unconscious moments because I sleep during some episodes too, but only those which I previously listened to with proper attention at least a few times, I promise." So Anita is actually she listens to episodes a few times, and maybe after having listened to them certain episodes a number of times, she might actually use them to help her fall asleep. But Anita is not the only one. I've talked about this before. Plenty of my listeners find the find the rhythm of my episodes and my speaking to be actually very relaxing and calming, which is very nice. And some people choose to use my talking to help them drift off to sleep. I'm taking that in the best possible way. I think it's intended in the best possible way. Obviously, I could feel disappointed and think, "What, really? I'm sleep inducing?" But let's take that positively and think, well, obviously I'm very calming. I'm a very calming and relaxing and beneficial presence, which allows people, it just sends people into a lovely cocoon of peacefulness and calm, and allows people to rid themselves of all anxiety, and it helps people sleep. So this is great. Anita continued, my Spotify Wrapped for this year revealed that I listened to Luke's English podcast for about 23,601 minutes. And I bet there is at least one person who can easily beat that. And that would be fair, because unfortunately, I didn't even manage to beat my own record from 2023 when I spent 41,821 hours listening to your fantastic podcast. So let me just stop there. So I think, Anita, this means that for 2025, you are the champion, though. Even though this is like definitely less than you got before, you have beaten D, who was the previous, what should we call it, trophy holder but you've jumped in with 23,601 minutes. But that's less than 2023, when apparently you had a lot of free conscious moments to fill with episodes of Luke's English podcast, when Anita, you spent 41,821 hours listening to my podcast. She wrote, I won't give up though, even though she didn't beat her previous score. I will do everything to gain first place next year, because being mentioned on the podcast and getting a mouth-made drum roll. I forgot to do the drum roll. Drum roll, everyone. 23,601 minutes. Getting a mouth-made drum roll is priceless. I listen to the podcast just for that reason. No, not really, she writes. The truth is, I listen to it because I always find it interesting and or entertaining, regardless of the topic, whether there are guests or not, and whether it lasts an hour or 3. I'm just open and grateful for each episode as it is. This is the type of content I would listen to, even if I was a native English speaker, and didn't have to do anything to improve my English. What this podcast gives me extends far beyond just improving my English skills. Maybe what I'm writing is too flattering. No, it's fine. I don't mind. Glazing. But Anita says, I don't care. You deserve it. So thank you for every episode and for all your efforts. I wish you lots of ideas for future episodes. All the best to you and your wonderful family. Thank you. A loyal and thankful listener from Poland, Anita. And she did include a screenshot, which you can't see on the screen, but you just have to take it from me. It is real. So there you go, listeners. What will you do this year, everybody? There you go. 23,601 minutes. Or could you go even further and beat 2023's surely top score of 41,821 hours? Hours? Whoa. No, I don't believe it. It's got to be minutes. That has to be a typo. It has to be minutes. Anyway, this year, who will be crowned the champion of 2026? Only you can decide. Okay, that is the end of this episode. Part 2 available next week. But until then, I will say good morning. Yes, I didn't mean to say that, but I'm saying it. Good morning. Good morning. Hello. Good afternoon. Good evening. Good night. And indeed, until next time, goodbye. Bye. Bye. Bye.